Now we will come to an interesting topic. We will create the structure of the book, and we are going to use Git repository for that. So in this project, I'll try to show you the most important and fundamental mechanics needed to learn Git. I would like to make one point. Of course, we can use Git for IT projects and this is its natural environment, but there's no problem to use Git or any other version control system to track the changes to other types of projects. For example, such a project could be creating a book. And this is what we are going to do in this project. From a technical point of view, it doesn't matter what type of project we do. The process is exactly the same. So let's start working. You can see I have my PowerShell opened at the left side of the screen. And at the right side of the screen, you can see my projects folder. And inside of it, you can see a book folder. So this book folder would be a catalog we are going to work with in this project. So let's go to our PowerShell. Let's type cd space and drag the book folder into our PowerShell. Now let's hit enter. And now we can see we are in our book folder, which is the folder of our project, and we are going to work with it. So let's go to this folder in our file explorer as well. You can see this folder is empty at the moment, but we are going to create a Git repository in it, and we are going to create some files of our book here. So let's initialize our Git repository. However, at this stage, I would like to show you one thing. We can use various parameters, also known as flags, in our commands. They usually offer some additional options. But we also have the basic parameters of the help value and the h value, which allow us to do two nice things in Git. Now I will show you the first way. If we hit git init with the flag help and press enter, this is what we are going to get. This way we will open the documentation in our browser. Git gives us internal documentation. It's already on our hard drive after installing Git, and we can learn more about this command. So with different commands you can access the documentation and get more detailed information. Let's close this for now. And now I will show you the second tip that may help you. Let's type git init with the h flag, but with one dash. Let's hit enter. And in this way, we can get useful information about what parameters we can use and information about what they do. I just wanted to show you that something like this exists and you may want to look into it. But now let's clear our console. And we can start working with Git. Let's just hit git init, press enter. We don't need to put any path. If we want to create a Git repository in a folder, we are at the moment. And you can see in my file explorer that our Git repository has been created. But let's try to find it in our PowerShell. You can see I'm in my book folder. That's exactly the same folder we can see here, where we have our Git repository. But when we place ls, we have no response, which could mean that in our folder there's no files or other folders inside. Let's hit dir, for example, which also shows us the content of this folder, and you can see we don't have the answer as well. But if we will type it like this and press enter, you can see that our hidden Git folder is viewed here with no problem. That's because the h flag stands for hidden in this example, and it will show us even the hidden elements. Even the Git folder, which is our repository. The Git folder is hidden on purpose, so we don't want to look there to break anything. We don't even have to go there while working with Git. This is part of the Git system for Git itself. This is an internal integration of the history of the changes to our project, our local repository. Everything outside the Git folder is our workspace, where we will add various files and folders. And with Git, we will also be able to restore this workspace to the previous version, etc. So we have our workspace, and inside it there's a Git folder hidden where our repository is. We can even go to this folder in our command line. So let's do this. Let's place cd.git, place ls, and we can see the list of the folders and files inside our Git repository. For example, we have a config file, and we can check what's in it with the cat command and config. Of course, I made a typo, so let's try it again. And here you can see the content of our config file in our Git repository. There are various parameters related to our local repository and not the global data. Alright, now let's clear our console. Let's go back. Here we are in the book folder, where we should be, which is our workspace. And now let's check the status of our Git repository. Git status, enter, and this is the effect we are going to get. We can see we are on our branch master. We have no commits yet, and we have nothing to commit at the moment. We even have the suggestion that if we create or copy files, we can use git add command to track those files. So there's no history of our repository because we didn't do anything yet. So let's do something. Let's create a file. With the echo command, in quotation marks, we can place the content of the file. So it's going to be a book introduction. And let's call this file txt. Let's hit enter. We can see this file has been created in our file explorer. We can also see it in our PowerShell if we place ls. We have an introduction txt file. And now we can open it with our notepad, with the notepad command and placing the name of our file. Let's remember that if we press tab at this point, the PowerShell will auto-complete the name of our file, so it's way better and faster to work with. Now let's hit enter, and this way we have our file open in the notepad. We can see that the content we typed in our PowerShell right here is exactly the same if we open the file in the notepad. Now let's clear our console and let's try to check our Git status. This is the effect we will get, and now we can see we have some additional information here. Nothing changed at first. We are still on branch master. This is the main branch of our project. We are not creating other branches at the moment. However, know that Git gives you such possibilities. New branches of the project are most often created when working with a team where we want to work separately on some part of the project, independently of the rest of the team and the main branch of the project. So we are on a branch master now. We don't have any commits yet. We haven't created a snapshot of our project using commit yet. Then we have the information that Git knows there's an untracked file in our workspace. Git knows this file exists and won't do anything with it until we tell it otherwise. If you want to add this file to the repository so that it can be remembered and tracked, you can see some suggestions here. You can write the command git add and a file name with the extension. So let's do it. Git add introduction. Let's hit enter. And let's check our Git status once again. You should know 3 Git commands at this point. Git init to initialize our local repository, Git status to check the status of our Git repository, and Git add for adding the files and folders. Adding to what? You'll find out soon. Let's hit enter. And this is the effect we will get. Now we have this file marked in green. Our file now is added to the staging area. And what am I going to say now requires a lot of imagination from you. But only now, because later in the presentation, I will explain it much better. So even if it seems unclear to you now, we will start using it in practice, and then in theory I will discuss it in more detail, and everything will become clear to you. We have 3 areas while working with Git. The first area is our workspace, which is a folder where we create files and folders for our project. The second area of our project is a hidden Git folder in our workspace. Our entire repository is in that folder. But in addition to these 2 areas, there's a third one called the staging area. It is a kind of a storage room. There are files in the staging area that we want to include in the next snapshot with a commit. So the files that we kind of add to the queue to save with the next commit. That's all for now. Just remember that we have these 3 areas. Our workspace, the hidden Git folder, and the staging area where the files that will be added to the repository with the next commit are stored. It's just worth knowing at the moment that technically the staging area is also in a Git folder, but think of it as a virtual space with the files waiting to be added to the repository the next time you'll do the commit. So now having our file added to the staging area, we can do our first commit to add this file to our project's repository. So let's do it. Git commit. Let's hit enter. And automatically our default code editor will be opened. We chose the Visual Studio Code during the Git installation, as you may see on your monitor. And here we have a request to place the commit message of our changes. This should be a description of what our commit contains. When writing a book, I can say I add the introduction to the book. Any lines in this file containing a hash at the beginning will be ignored. This is the information for you of what will be included in this commit. We can see that only this one new file is added. We do not modify any other file or delete any. We also have the information that this is the initial commit. In fact, if we are doing our first commit, it's good to call it the initial commit, just like this. Let's save it with Ctrl S on our keyboard, and we can close our code editor. Here we can see that our console went on, so we can go back to work. And this way we just made our first commit. We have already gone through the entire most important process. We can see some useful information in our log right now, where we can see master root commit. This is the ID of our commit. It's in a hash number. It's related to SHA-1 algorithm I told you before, where every commit in our repository has its own identification number written in the hex number. Next, we can see its initial commit right here. And we can see we have 1 file changed, 0 insertions, and 0 deletions. Here we have our file that has been added to the repository with this commit. Now let's clear our console. And we can place something called git log. And this way we will get the log of all the commits in our repository. Here we have all useful information. We can see its commit with its identification number. This is the whole version of that number, written in hex number. It's related to SHA-1 algorithm. There we can see we are in our head of the project, which means it's the actual version, the most actual commit made right now. We can see we are on our master branch. We can see who did the commit right here and when did it happen. As well, we can see our commit message, which is an initial commit in our case. We can even put it simpler by typing git log one line. And here we can get the shorter version of our git log, where we have the shorter version of the ID of our commit, information that we are on our head, which is the most actual version of our project, on the master branch, and then we can see our commit message, which is the initial commit. Now let's change something in our file. I write this book because. Now let's clear our console and see if Git sees what's going on in our file. But before we do that, we can see that our file is not saved at the moment. So let's save the changes to our file with Ctrl S. Now you can see those changes has been saved. So let's check the Git status of our project. Let's hit enter. And now you can see that our file has been modified. Previously it was untracked. So now our file is already in a Git area. It is being tracked. Now let's say that we have 4 file states in Git. The first state is untracked file. We've seen it before. Most often as we create a new file, Git sees it but does not track the changes to it. When a file starts being tracked, it can be in the other 3 states: tracked unmodified, tracked modified, and tracked staged, which is waiting for the commit. Previously we said that we have 3 file areas when working with Git. Now we are talking about the 4 states that files can be in while placed in these 3 areas. This will become understandable as we will discuss the theory later on. But now we can see that Git sees the changes made to the file. We can also see the suggestions of what we can do in this situation. We can use git add and a file name to update what will be committed, or we can use git restore file to discard changes in working directory. So now let's try to discard these changes. Let's hit git restore introduction txt. Let's hit enter. Let's hit git status once again. And we can see we have nothing to commit because those changes to this file were discarded. We can see it placing cat introduction txt. And we can see we have only book introduction without this additional sentence I made. We can see it here in our notepad just because it's open, but when I close it and open it once again, you can see our file has been updated. So the changes I made were discarded. So let's clear our console. Let's hit git status once again. And as I said before, we have nothing to commit because Git sees no changes since the last commit. You don't even see our introduction txt file in the git status list. We saw it previously when it was created. This file was untracked back then. We saw it as well when it was tracked and modified. Now we don't see it. It's still there, but we don't see it because its status is tracked unmodified. So it's the 3rd stage of 4 that I was talking about a moment ago. All of this will become clear as soon as we will create the first chapter of our book. I mentioned that there may be some irritation along the way, but for now I can only mention some things, then show them with examples, and then I am able to discuss it more in theory. After this course, everything I am talking about will be a child's play for you. So let's create the chapter 1 of our book. Let's do this in a File Explorer, new file, text document, chapter 1 txt. Let's place ls in PowerShell to see it. We can see we have 2 files now, chapter 1 and introduction. So let's check our git status. And we can see that Git only shows us this one new file. We know the introduction file is also seen by Git, but nothing has changed with it since the last commit, so Git won't show it to us here. So now let's make changes to our introduction file. Doesn't matter. Let's save it with Control S. And let's check Git status once again. Let's clear our console. And let's check it. And now you can see that we have one modified file, which is the introduction.txt, and one new created file, which is chapter 1. One of them is tracked and modified, and the other one is the new file, so it's untracked. So now if we do a commit, chapter 1 won't even be taken into account because it's untracked. But we have made changes to our tracked file. So if we want those changes to be taken into account within the next commit, we have to do something with it. We have to add it to the staging area, so the changes of that file could be saved with the next commit. Now if we type git add a, it would be the same as git --all. And this means we will add all the files to the staging area. We could do it separately. We could add couple files after space in one command. But if we do it this way, we will add all the files in one simple command. So let's do this. Let's hit enter. And now let's check it with git status. We can see now that both our files are tracked and both of them are being added to the staging area. Now we can safely do a commit and all the changes to these files will be saved. We can also see that one is a new file and the other has been modified. The simplest indicator is that now our files are highlighted in green and not in red. So this is a sign for us that everything is ready to commit. So let's do a second commit. This time with a flag, because this way we can write a commit message without opening our code editor. Commit message has to be included in the commit, because we have to document all the changes. Now, no matter what language you speak, it is recommended to write the commit messages in English in present simple tense. So let's do it. We put the commit message in the quotation marks. Add a chapter 1 txt and change the introduction txt. Let's hit enter. We can see we have a commit on our master branch. Here we have another hash ID of this particular commit. Here we can see our message, which is add a chapter 1 txt and change the introduction txt. We can see that 2 files changed and 1 new file was created, and it was the chapter 1 txt. Let's clear our console. Let's check our git status. We can see we have nothing to commit, so everything is updated. Let's check out our git log. And here we have all the information about all our commits in this Git repository. Starting from the bottom, we have initial commit, date of this commit, author of it, identification number of this particular commit, and then we have another commit where we placed a message, add a chapter 1 txt and change the introduction, its date, its author, a unique ID number with the information that this is our head, so this is the most actual commit right now, on our branch master. So you can see that git log is the whole history of our repository with all the commits and the information who, when, and what changed. So we have the most important information behind us. We will work a little more with our book project to repeat some things and get to know it better, and then we will move on to the theory, after which everything will be clear to you. So let's continue.